Think America's housing market is finally stabilizing? Think again. Behind the for sale signs and price cuts, something far more dangerous is happening. Millions of homeowners are quietly trapped in homes they can't sell, can't refinance, and can't afford to keep. Inventory is exploding, demand is vanishing, and the safety net people thought they had is tearing apart in real time. This isn't a slow correction. This is a housing freefall. And most Americans don't realize how close they are to the edge. For years, Americans were told the housing market was unbreakable. Low supply, strong demand, a new normal. But in 2025, that illusion is cracking fast. Behind the headlines claiming stability, the housing market is quietly entering freefall. Not a sudden crash you see overnight, but a slow, grinding collapse that traps homeowners before they even realize what's happening. Millions of people are discovering they're stuck in homes they can't sell, can't refinance, and increasingly can't afford to keep. And the warning signs are everywhere. Let's start with inventory. Across the country, housing supply is surging at a pace we haven't seen since before the 2008 crash. In many metro areas, active listings are up 40, 50, even 70% compared to just 2 years ago. Homes that once sold in days are now sitting for months. Price cuts are becoming routine, and sellers are quietly panicking. But here's the problem. Even with prices slipping, buyers are disappearing faster. Mortgage rates hovering near 7% have fundamentally broken affordability. A home that cost $2,000 a month in 2021 now costs closer to $3,200 for the exact same house. Wages didn't rise that fast. Savings didn't either. And millions of buyers who were approved on paper are no longer able or willing to take the risk. This mismatch between supply and demand is creating a dangerous stall. Homes aren't moving. Sellers can't exit. And that's where the trap begins. Because many of today's homeowners bought at the peak. Between 2021 and 2023, prices surged at historic speed. In some regions, values jumped 40 to 60% in less than 2 years. Buyers stretched their finances, waived inspections, and locked themselves into loans they assumed would be easy to refinance later. But that escape route is gone. Refinancing is no longer an option. Selling means taking a loss, and staying means absorbing rising costs that never stop climbing. Property taxes are up. Insurance premiums are exploding. HOA fees are jumping. Utilities cost more. Repairs cost more. Everything costs more, except the value of the home itself. In many states, homeowners' insurance premiums have doubled or tripled in just a few years. In high-risk areas, some policies now cost $8,000 to $12,000 a year, and insurers are pulling out altogether, forcing homeowners into last resort plans with sky-high deductibles and limited coverage. That's not just expensive, that's destabilizing, because when insurance becomes unaffordable, buyers walk away, lenders get nervous, and values fall even faster. Now layer in investor behavior. During the boom, investors flooded the housing market. They bought single-family homes, condos, townhouses, anything they could rent or flip. In some cities, investors accounted for nearly 1 out of every 3 purchases. That artificial demand pushed prices higher and masked real affordability problems. But now, those investors are retreating. Rents are flattening or falling in many markets. Maintenance costs are soaring. Insurance is eating into margins. And vacancies are rising as tenants get priced out or double up. For the first time in years, investors are selling in large numbers, often below what they paid. And when investors rush for the exits, they don't trickle out. They flood the market. That flood adds even more inventory, pushing prices down further and trapping regular homeowners who never intended to speculate in the first place. This is how housing downturns accelerate. Not because everyone panics at once, but because the system quietly locks people in place. You can't sell without losing money. You can't refinance to lower payments. You can't rent it out profitably. So homeowners sit and wait and hope. But hope doesn't stop math. As prices soften, more homeowners slip into negative equity. That doesn't mean foreclosure overnight, but it does mean mobility disappears. Job opportunity in another city? Too risky to move. Family emergency? No financial cushion? Unexpected expense? Credit cards fill the gap. This is how housing stress bleeds into the broader economy. Consumer spending slows. Credit balances rise. Defaults creep upward. And lenders tighten standards just as people need flexibility the most. Meanwhile, builders are still finishing projects that began during the boom. New homes keep hitting the market even as demand weakens. Incentives grow. Price cuts multiply. And suddenly, existing homeowners are competing against brand new properties with financing perks they can't match. That pressure is relentless, and it's happening nationwide, not just in one overheated city or coastal bubble. Mid-sized cities, suburbs, and once affordable regions are feeling it hardest. These were the markets where people fled during the pandemic, chasing space and lower prices. Now those same areas are dealing with oversupply, slower job growth, and buyers who have vanished. The result is a housing market that looks stable on the surface, but hollow underneath. Sales volumes are weak. Days on market are climbing, and price declines are spreading quietly, neighborhood by neighborhood, zip code by zip code. This isn't a crash fueled by bad loans like 2008. It's something different. Es antipas, and in some ways more dangerous, because homeowners today are more financially stretched, more exposed to rising costs, and more dependent on stable employment than they realize. And as the economy slows, that stability starts to wobble. Layoffs are rising, job growth is cooling, overtime hours are shrinking, and for households already spending a record share of income on housing, it doesn't take much to tip the balance. Missed payments don't start with mortgages. They start with credit cards, then auto loans, then personal debt. Housing stress doesn't explode all at once. It leaks. And right now, those leaks are spreading. Across America, millions of homeowners are discovering the uncomfortable truth. The housing market didn't reset in their favor. It reset around them. And the longer prices drift lower, while costs stay high, the harder it becomes to escape. This is the early stage of the freefall, not the bottom, the moment before momentum takes over. And as pressure builds beneath the surface, the next phase doesn't start with headlines. It starts with behavior. And that shift is already underway. That behavioral shift changes everything. Because when homeowners stop believing time is on their side, decisions accelerate. What starts as hesitation quietly turns into urgency. And across the country, that transition is already happening. The first sign isn't foreclosure, it's listings. More homeowners are testing the market, hoping to exit before conditions worsen. At first, they price optimistically. Then, the weeks pass, showings slow, price cuts follow. And when those don't work, frustration sets in. This is where psychology kicks in. Sellers don't want to accept losses, but they fear being last. And as neighboring homes sell for less, expectations reset. One reduced listing becomes 5, 5 become 50. And suddenly, price declines feel normal instead of alarming. This normalization is dangerous, because once falling prices feel routine, buyers wait. They delay purchases, expecting better deals ahead. That hesitation drains demand further, even if mortgage rates don't rise. And when demand stalls, sellers lose leverage fast. At the same time, homeowners are facing an invisible squeeze. Insurance renewals arrive with shocking increases. Property tax reassessments hit mailboxes. HOA notices announce higher dues. Maintenance costs climb as contractors charge more and availability shrinks. These aren't optional expenses. They're fixed, and they keep rising even as home values soften. That creates a financial trap. Households begin reallocating spending, vacations disappear, dining out stops, subscriptions get canceled, but housing costs don't shrink. They dominate budgets, and when something breaks, a roof, an HVAC system, a car, credit fills the gap. Credit card balances rise, auto loan delinquencies tick up, and quietly, stress builds. This is where housing downturns intersect with the broader economy. When people feel stuck, they stop spending. And when millions of households pull back at once, the ripple effects hit everywhere. Retail slows, services weaken, small businesses feel it first, then layoffs follow. And layoffs change housing behavior immediately. Even rumors of job cuts are enough to freeze buyers. People delay commitments. Lenders tighten approvals. Down payments grow harder to assemble. And homes sit longer. Now add investors back into the picture. Many investors assumed rising rents would protect them. But rent growth has stalled in many markets and in some cases reversed. At the same time, insurance and taxes are crushing margins. Properties that once cash flowed now bleed money each month. So investors start exiting. Not all at once, but steadily. And when investors sell, they often undercut prices to move inventory quickly. That puts pressure on owner-occupied homes nearby. Appraisals come in lower. Loan approvals fall apart. Deals collapse. Each failed sale reinforces hesitation. Builders feel it too. During the boom, construction surged. Projects were financed, assuming strong demand and rising prices. But now, finished homes are piling up. Incentives grow larger. Discounts deepen. And builders compete directly with existing homeowners who can't match subsidized rates or closing credits. That competition drags the entire market downward. And unlike past cycles, this slowdown isn't concentrated in one sector or region. It's broad. Suburbs, Sunbelt cities, Midwest metros. Once hot relocation hubs, the pattern repeats everywhere. More listings, longer timelines, lower prices, all while costs remain stubbornly high. This mismatch creates emotional fatigue. Homeowners stop tracking values daily. They avoid conversations. They ignore news. But financial reality doesn't pause. And as months stretch into years, patience wears thin. Some homeowners try renting instead of selling, but rental markets are saturating too. Supply has surged. Tenants are price sensitive. Vacancy periods stretch, and landlords absorb losses they didn't anticipate. Others attempt loan modifications or relief programs. But those options are limited, slow, and often temporary. They delay outcomes. They don't solve them. The system becomes sticky. People can't move up. They can't move out. They can't move on. This stagnation creates a new kind of housing crisis, one that doesn't rely on mass foreclosures to cause damage. Instead, it traps capital, freezes mobility, and drains households slowly. And slowly is what makes it dangerous. Because slow stress doesn't trigger alarms, it erodes confidence. It spreads quietly, and by the time it becomes visible in data, behavior has already shifted. Local governments feel it next. As transactions decline, revenue from transfer taxes and fees drops. Budget gaps appear. Infrastructure projects stall. Services tighten. And municipalities raise taxes or fees to compensate, adding even more pressure to homeowners already stretched thin. That feedback loop is hard to escape. Higher costs push more sellers. More. Sellers push prices down. Lower prices reduce tax bases. Reduced services weaken communities, and weakened communities repel buyers. Meanwhile, lending standards tighten. Banks become cautious as collateral values soften. Appraisal standards stiffen. Credit becomes harder to access. That restricts demand even further, especially for first-time buyers who already face affordability hurdles. The housing market doesn't collapse all at once. it decelerates, then it stalls, then it slides. And once momentum turns negative, reversing it takes more than optimism. This is where the illusion of resilience breaks. Homeowners who believed equity would protect them start realizing that paper gains don't pay bills, that long-term value doesn't help short-term cash flow, and that housing, once seen as a safety net, can become an anchor. As confidence fades, behavior shifts again. People stop upgrading homes. Renovations are postponed. Contractors lose work. Home improvement spending drops. Another sector feels the slowdown. Every layer connects. Housing isn't just where people live. It's how they borrow, how they spend, how they feel secure. And when that foundation weakens, the impact spreads far beyond property values. Right now, the market sits in a fragile balance, not crashing, but tilting. And as pressure accumulates, it doesn't release evenly. It releases where households are weakest, where savings are thin, where incomes are unstable, where costs are highest. That's where the next phase accelerates, not with a headline, not with a single event, but with a cascade of small decisions that suddenly move in the same direction. And once that alignment happens, the freefall no longer feels theoretical. It becomes visible, and it becomes very hard to stop. When that alignment finally locks in, the shift becomes impossible to ignore. Listings stop feeling temporary. Price cuts stop feeling strategic. And homeowners stop believing recovery is right around the corner. This is the moment when the market stops hovering and starts slipping. At first, the declines look manageable. 1 or 2% here, a few $1,000s there. But those small drops stack. Appraisals adjust downward. Comparable sales reset expectations. And suddenly, the value homeowners thought they had evaporates quietly. Negative equity spreads faster than most people expect, not because prices crash overnight, but because they drift lower while loan balances barely move. Years of payments barely dent principal, and refinancing is still off the table. That creates a growing pool of owners who owe more than they could recover if they sold. That realization changes behavior dramatically. Homeowners stop investing in their properties. Repairs get delayed. Maintenance becomes reactive instead of preventative. Neighborhoods start showing signs of wear, and those visible signals further weaken buyer confidence. Meanwhile, delinquencies rise. Not explosively, but persistently. Missed payments creep upward. Grace periods get used. Forbearance requests increase quietly. And lenders begin preparing for losses long before headlines catch up. This is where housing stress transitions into financial stress. Banks start adjusting risk models. Loan approvals tighten further. Credit lines shrink. HELOCs get frozen or reduced. That removes one of the last financial cushions many households relied on. Without access to credit, shocks hit harder. A medical bill, a job loss, a major repair. Each event forces difficult choices, and as those choices multiply across millions of households, patterns emerge. Foreclosures don't spike immediately, but short sales do. Deed-in-lieu agreements increase. Quiet exits replace dramatic defaults. Properties change hands at discounts that never make headlines but steadily drag comps lower. And once that process spreads, it feeds on itself. Lower comps trigger lower appraisals. Lower appraisals kill deals. Killed deals keep inventory high. High inventory suppresses prices further. At the same time, unemployment becomes a bigger factor. As the broader economy slows, layoffs extend beyond tech and white-collar sectors, logistics, construction, retail, services. These industries employ homeowners in the very regions that saw the biggest housing booms. Job insecurity freezes demand completely. People don't buy homes when they're unsure about paychecks. They don't upgrade. They don't relocate. They conserve cash. And conservation slows everything. Local economies contract. Small businesses close. Municipal budgets tighten further, infrastructure projects stall, public services degrade. The quality of life appeal that once attracted buyers erodes. Housing doesn't exist in isolation. It reflects confidence. And right now, confidence is thin. What makes this phase especially dangerous is the lack of a clear catalyst. There's no single crisis moment, no sudden collapse that triggers intervention. Instead, the system grinds downward, while policymakers debate whether there's even a problem. Interest rates may eventually fall, but relief isn't guaranteed. Lower rates don't fix negative equity. They don't restore lost savings. They don't reverse demographic shifts or job losses. And if rates fall because the economy weakens further, demand may remain muted regardless. That's the paradox. The conditions that could stabilize housing may arrive too late, or under circumstances that suppress confidence even more. Meanwhile, households adapt in ways that reshape the market permanently. People delay homeownership. Families double up. Renters stay renters. Migration patterns shift again. This isn't just a correction. It's a recalibration of expectations. Homeownership stops feeling like a guaranteed wealth builder and starts feeling like a long-term commitment with real risk. That mindset shift matters. It influences demand for years, not months. Developers respond by pulling back. New projects get canceled. Construction slows sharply, but the homes already built don't disappear. They linger, reminders of overconfidence during the boom. As supply gradually tightens again, it does so against a backdrop of caution. Buyers negotiate harder. Lenders remain conservative. Appraisals stay restrained. The era of rapid appreciation fades. And for homeowners who entered late, that reality is painful. They're not facing disaster headlines, but they're living with constraints that reshape daily life. Fewer options, less flexibility, more anxiety. This is the real cost of the freefall. Not just falling prices, but lost mobility. Not just market data, but personal trade-offs. And those trade-offs ripple outward. Political pressure grows as affordability remains strained. Calls for intervention increase. Programs get proposed. Some help at the margins. Others distort incentives further, but none can fully undo the excesses of the boom. Housing cycles don't reset neatly, they unwind slowly. The market eventually finds a floor, but not before confidence resets, behavior shifts, and expectations realign. For some homeowners, that floor comes with acceptance. For others, with loss. For many, with lessons they didn't expect to learn. The belief that housing only goes up fades. The assumption that equity equals security weakens. And the idea that timing doesn't matter disappears. What replaces it is caution. And caution, once embedded, lingers. This is why the freefall doesn't end with a crash. It ends with a changed market, one that moves slower, values risk more carefully, and treats housing less like a shortcut to wealth, and more like what it always was, beneath the hype, a place to live. And for millions of Americans navigating this transition, the challenge isn't surviving a headline collapse. It's adapting to a reality where escape isn't immediate, recovery isn't guaranteed, and patience becomes the most expensive cost of all. That's the legacy of a market that promised stability and delivered constraint, and it's a shift that will shape housing decisions long after the freefall stops making news.